All right, guys, welcome to episode 6 of the Breakwall Breakdown. Going live on this one with Father's Day and all that. I didn't have time to pre record, but that's cool. I like going live once in a while. Let's get right into it here. Actually, even before I get into it, let's let's talk about something. Most of you guys who are watching this are all about conservation. If we have any new people, I just want to let you know that I personally kind of consider the Long Beach Breakwall to be a playground. SoCal Fishing Squad, what's up? I consider the Long Beach Breakwall to be a playground. If you want to keep fish, I would suggest going somewhere else. I mean, it's a big wall, but you definitely keep a bag on board in case you gill hook or gut hook something, so you're not throwing dead fish back. But if you want to keep something, keep a sculpin. But definitely, it's a resource to be protected. And if you're new to it, I just want to be the one to let you know. So let's get into this. We had some pretty warm water. Inner Harbor was, well, let's see if you can see it. Inner Harbor was 65. Outer Wall was running right around 63. Friday and Saturday, the temperatures seemed to pretty much hold the same. We didn't get a whole lot on anything that swam. No paddle tails. Couple on the fluke. It seemed to be that the big percentage of what we caught was craws. Did really good on the punch craw. Um, Ronnie, one of the guys out on the boat, did really good with the reaction innovation craw. We did good on the HDX craw. But I would say a lot of what we were getting, uh, a lot of like what really put the hurt on them was the sudden impact 702 swim craws. And I was taking my neck breaker, and I was putting these blacktail hooks on them down to like a 2 or a 3-0, something that fit on there nicely. And one of the things that's really cool about this is you play it, occasionally you get bit right at the wall after playing through the kelp, but quite often you'd come out of the kelp, put it into gear, and this would just start drifting through the column. And these baits, they give a really nice kick about like that. And that rate of fall when you put it in gear, they start kicking on their way down. You don't need to work them faster to kick. They kick at a very slow speed. The unfortunate thing is no one carries them right now. Sudden Impact gave a bunch of them for the Glizzy's giveaway, so quite a few people got their hands on them. If you're interested in them, you got to call your local shop, ask them to order them, mention them to the shop. I think Performance had them at one point, but I can't wait to see these in more shops because, like I said, we were putting a hurting on them with them. And they're durable. You get quite a few fish out of them. I think typically we were getting anywhere from 6 to 10 fish on them before we had to change them out. And you can see they were just absolutely hammering them. Even you'd lose a claw. They were getting bit with one claw. And something about that paddle action, they were just loving it. Where if I did a paddle tail, they didn't seem to want it. And if I was, you know, just using a craw, they wanted it, but not as much as they wanted that. So in my craw box, I typically keep paddle craws, realistic looking craws, punch craws, and I'll even keep, you know, the dragon tails from Doll and Baits in there. And I'll keep a couple curly tail grubs, some dark sleepers. But it seemed like those were the three things they really wanted, with the 702 being the highlight. If you guys that are watching have any questions, feel free to write them in. So another thing I wanted to kind of go over is just how big this whole area is. I've mentioned it a couple times. We got over 30 miles of fishable area. I had a couple people mention to me, they said, hey, you need to be a little more conservative about what and where, don't burn spots. And so just to kind of test it in my last video, I opened up with a shot of a spot that was not where we fished. We fished somewhere else. I tend to try to not show the spots. But the spot that I showed that video came out Saturday morning. Saturday evening, I fished up and down the entire wall. I only saw 4 other boats, and all 4 of them were on that spot. Now, in that video, I talk about, I think 4 or 5 times, hey, we switched spots again. Hey, the bite kind of died. We're switching spots again. What's up, Luke? Fun Fishing Sunday. What's up, Ronnie? I was just talking about you on those reaction innovations. But one of the points I kept making was, we need to switch spots. You need to switch spots. So when you go by a spot, when I drive by this spot that I showed, there's 4 boats on anchor in that spot. Now, I want to say so far 700 people have watched that video. Only 4 people went to that spot, but you're kind of losing the point of what that video was, which was switch spots. Like, keep moving, keep adjusting. Don't go to what you think the spot was and fish that spot. So based on seeing that, I'm going to start getting a little more conservative with what I show on the videos, making sure to maybe even hide the background a little more, because I don't want to burn something out. I want us to all be able to go out there and have fun and find our own places. And also, that being said, I want to talk about numbers. Last couple of weeks, I reported numbers. And we had a really good week a couple weeks ago where we ended up getting 90-something fish. And one of the guys who was on that trip, Jose, he actually texted me the next day. Really, really cool dude, Jose. And he said, if I'd have been being a little more serious, it would have probably been 100 fish night. And, for whatever reason, that didn't quite sit with me right. So, and I kind of figured it out after a couple of days of thinking about it. Those high fish nights where we got 90 plus fish, that's not the night to get super serious and try to get 100 fish. That is the night to experiment more. And he was experimenting. He had these little crabs with a built-in hook, and they weren't really connecting. And then I had the idea, maybe, hey, let me look at the hook. And we bent the hook out a little. Then he started hooking up on those. Like, that's exactly right. That high fish night, that's not the night to try to get to 100. That's the night to start experimenting and messing around and seeing what else works and trying things we might not try on a slow night. So I don't think I'm going to be posting numbers anymore, because I don't want to start associating numbers with success. For example, they were on small things that night. They wanted everything small. They wanted crustaceans. But had that been a night where they were on paddle tails, I personally probably would have sacrificed the larger number to start moving to larger paddle tails and trying to get that bigger bite. So again, I don't think I'm going to post numbers anymore, because I don't want to associate numbers with success. I also don't want to associate fish size with success. I don't want to say, oh, we caught a 7 and an 8, and then say, well, this week wasn't good because we didn't get that 7 and 8. There's times where, I remember one specific time we had a 14 fish night, and it was a rough night. We weren't catching any, and finally, a couple hours into the night, we realized they wanted orange flukes, and we turned the night around from having 1 fish on the board to having 14, because we had those couple orange flukes. We literally fished until we were out of orange flukes, couldn't catch on anything else. And to me, that's a success. Having a no fish night, finding out there's this specific, that comment went away. There we go. Finding that they want this specific thing, and then getting those 14 fish kind of makes it a success. It doesn't need to be 100 fish to be a success. I just got asked You guys been throwing jigs at the breakwall or more soft plastics? Um, when you say jigs, do you mean like skirted lead heads? Because if that's the case, yes, I'm throwing those with plastic trailers. Typically at the breakwall, we're not using hard jigs. We're going to be using soft plastic and lead heads. But so yeah, let's talk about what else we saw. Saw some red tide moving in. Saw some. I was actually kind of worried about the weekend. Hold on 1 second, guys. Many times you fish inside the harbor. Can you compare that to fishing the wall? Thanks. Um, I always prefer to fish the outside of the wall. That's my favorite place in the world. Sometimes it's not biting and I move to the inner harbor. Sometimes it's rough when I move to the inner harbor. And sometimes we have a passenger that gets seasick and we move to the inner harbor. And I'm glad the inner harbor is there. It gives us a lot of plan B options. But yeah, first thing I'll always be checking is the outer harbor. Oh yeah, so red tide. Um, we had some red tide coming in real thick. I was kind of worried about the weekend, and I don't know if it's because of current movement or what, but it didn't really seem to be there this weekend. We had some spots with a little bit of bioluminescence, and we would try to move out of them or while we were in them, dead stick it a little more, but it didn't end up being the problem that I thought it was going to be. I'm just going to go ahead and get right into the questions. And like I said, if you're on here, feel free to write in questions. I'll answer them as you write them in. So these are a combination of questions that people wrote onto Instagram today and questions from our videos over the last couple days. Um, this is from Vincent. Awesome video as always. What tide do you guys like to fish? Tide that I like to fish. I used to swear by a rising tide. Like I only wanted to fish the rising tide, and I've had that completely proved wrong. I no longer care if it's rising or falling. I've had amazing days on both. Kevin just wrote in, what is your go-to bait when the bite is slow? Traditionally, my go-to bait when the bite is slow is going to be the sudden impact 5 3/4 fluke. There's a lot of 5-inch flukes. I think this 5 3/4 with that extra 3/4 of an inch just has so much more action without the profile becoming a problem with being bigger. Like I'll fish 8-inch flukes. I like fishing the big flukes, but to me, this in a 5-inch doesn't change. I don't think they're going to want to eat the 5-inch over this with the 5-inch being smaller, but I think this is going to have more action and appear more realistic. So that's my go-to when the bite is slow. My other go-to when the bite is slow is the sudden impact punch craw. Punch craw has turned quite a few nights around for me. Here's another question. What camera do you guys use? We use multiple cameras. We got multiple GoPros. We have the Ace Pro, and quite a bit of it will be filmed on our cell phones. Just trying to get that different angle, or if the camera's in action over here, we might grab this one. Yeah, multiple cameras. What boat is that and how do you like it? My boat is an 18-foot Sunbird Neptune. I really like it. It's was later bought out by Hydrosport, and if you were to buy a new Hydrosport, it's the same whole mold that I have now. It's just a different inner shell. How good is the sudden impact compared to other flukes? Um, when I first got a hold of the sudden impact flukes, I liked them so much I got rid of all my other flukes and rebought all the colors I liked in sudden impact. That's everyone might have different opinions, but that's what I did. I got a hold of sudden impact flukes for the very first time and instantly didn't want to throw anything else. right, next question here. What terrain do you find those sand bass? I don't think there's a specific terrain I'm looking for. Uh, I'm looking at structure. I'm fishing structure, and if the sand bass are there, awesome. I'm not specifically going. I want sand bass today. So it's kind of what fish I find is that again we've got 30 miles to deal with, and that's not even counting other isolated structures. So we got 30 miles of what I would consider edges to fish. So I'm not going to go to a spot looking for, oh, this thing lives here. I'm just going to a spot looking for what might be busy. More than terrain, I would probably look for current. Digging your headlamp you put on your hat, Bill. Which brand is it? Um, it's from Amazon. I'll try to post if I remember. I'm going to post a link on my Instagram stories. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with those headlamps. Funny enough, what I started doing because sometimes you forget to charge them is I've got a little Android style charger I keep in my truck, and just when I get in from the trip, that thing goes right on the charger. I don't even take it off the hat because I have a hat I'll wear at night. So when I get out, it's all charged up, ready to go. I usually keep it. It comes in a 2-pack, so the second one lives in my tackle bag just in case. Do you have any preferences on tide, moon phases for fishing the wall at night? You know what? Um, I'm not going to specifically say what tides or moon phases I would prefer, but I'm learning that as much as it all matters, it doesn't matter, right? Like, you definitely want a moving tide, but since you're not going out for 1 hour, tide will be moving at one point or another. You will have lulls, and quite often, you'll hit it so you're fishing a rising tide into a slack, back into a falling. So you will have those it's hard to plan a trip where you don't have a bit of a stagnant tide, a bit of a slack time. And then same thing, right? Like the moon phase does matter. I'm not going to necessarily tell you what I think matters in the moon phase. But what I do know is I used to really pay attention to the moon phase. And I only had certain times I wanted to go out on certain moons. And there's just so much more to it than that. There's moon, there's tide, there's water temperature, there's what baits in the area. There's if they're on craws, if they're on fin baits, if there's bioluminescence, how fast we're playing it, if there, what kind of current there is, if it's really heavy current, if it's light current, if it's no current. There's so many factors that I don't really think about the pieces of the puzzle too much anymore because even nights where what I thought were all the pieces lining up, it just ended up being okay. I mean, sometimes all the pieces line up and it's crazy, but sometimes all the pieces line up too and it's crazy because there's other factors we're not seeing. Like we're not underwater, we can't see it all. So my philosophy has become go when you can go. Like none of us are able to go 30 days a month. If we're able to go one day in the month or we're able to go 6 days in the month, like I consider 6 days to be a lot. Just go the days you can go. Don't worry about all the things. And if you happen to be out there on a slow night, use it as a learning experience of what do I do to make a bite when the bite is slow. All right, this one says at night, do you like fishing off the wall or close to the wall? And what determines how close and how far you are from it? That's a really good question. Um, One of my favorite bites is when they're biting right up on the rocks and you got to fish it close and you're casting into the rocks and they're hitting right away and you're fighting to get them out of the rocks. You're fighting to get them out of the kelp. They're super aggressive because they see so much shelter. Like when you're trying to get them and they can see the rocks right there, they're fighting harder than if they're 20 feet from the rocks. So that's one of my favorite bites. That's always what I'm hoping for. But sometimes they're in that middle area. So as the night goes on, you kind of figure out where they are and you position your boat accordingly. But I'm usually checking pretty close because it's what I'm hoping for. Do you think the moon has to do with the bite? Yes and no. Done great on good moons, and I've done great on horrible moons. How often are you seeing kayaks hitting the wall? Not often at all. I don't see kayaks hitting the wall often. I know they do, but I tend to see them more in the inner areas. Do you ever hit the Seal Beach jetty? Not the one where you launch from, but the one further south. No, I don't. I tend to, about the furthest south I'm going to go is going to be the oil rig, and that's rare. I usually won't even go to the oil rig. The furthest south I'll go is the bottom of the wall, and the furthest north I'll go is Cabrillo. If I'm doing a personal trip, I might go up to PV, but I tend to just stick to what I would call the Long Beach Harbor. Do you think the calico are keen on crustaceans when they spawn because of the high fat? I don't know. It would be cool to know though. Yeah, we had the spawn about a week ago, and I and during the spawn, and but also this week they were on crustaceans. Now I don't know if that's because the crustaceans also had something going on that had them super active. I don't know if that's because we had a little more of a swell this week, so it was wiping more of them off the wall. I I couldn't tell you why. I just know that that's what they were into. And you know what? I honestly, if someone wants to tell me why, I'd love to know, and I'd love to repost that. I'd love to bring it up next week if someone has an answer. How many fish were caught at the breakwall this week? I think we kind of already went over that. We did good. I'm not going to say the exact numbers, but we did good. And I will say this: on Saturday we were not finding the bite. Um, by the time the sun went down, we had three fish, and we were constantly changing. If you guys were out on Saturday, you know the wind was a huge problem. The wind was an absolute menace. By about 9, we were finally able to get outside of the wall, and I think by 10 we were only on 7 fish. 7 fish by 10 o'clock, and we did a huge spot move. Totally moved to something completely outside of what we were doing, and we got on them, and it was nonstop double ups, nonstop triple ups, and ended up being a really high number night. And I've never had a fourth quarter like that where you just going from such a like all time slow night to just through the roof. And that's why I say you can't just go and find the spot. You got to keep looking. And even once we found the spot, boy did we cover distance. We were just through that zone as soon as that bite kind of slowed down, bumping ourselves down looking for another zone that was biting. But yeah, I think that's had quite a bit of questions. I'm glad we got to go over all those. Yeah, call your local shop. Tell them to get those 702 craws because you know it's awesome that the guys who were at Glizzy's and got to get these have them. But I want us all to be able to just walk into a store and buy them. Do you fish slugs often? Yeah, Charlie was fishing the slug. Charlie was fishing a slug Friday night, and I want to say he got well over 10 fish on that slug, along with the other things he was fishing. I personally fished a slug also on Friday night. Nothing. I didn't get a single slug fish. I wasn't using the same. I'm a big proponent of color. Some people think color doesn't matter. Is this frozen? I'll finish this just in case it's not frozen. There was definitely a difference where Charlie had a Chobe color. There we go. I think I got it to unfreeze. So, all right, guys, am I back? Yeah, that was T. T froze the live. Um, so yeah, I some people think color doesn't matter. I think it really does matter. I was throwing brown and red slugs because that seemed to be what the crustaceans we were getting hit on. I didn't get anything on the slug. Charlie was throwing, I believe, an anchovy colored slug, and he was getting whacked. So yeah, take what you want from that. Do you ever shore fish anymore? Um, I haven't shore fished lately. Where I tend to shore fish is if I happen to wake up early for work, I'll usually go hit MDR on my way in just because it's a convenient drive. It's not too far out of my way. So yeah, you'll probably see more of that as I get the random days where I wake up a little early and do a 45-minute session before work. But yeah, it just hasn't worked out in the last couple months. But yeah, so unless there's any last questions, I'm gonna end this. T just said happy late Father's Day to all you underappreciated studs in here. And yeah, I think we'll end it on that. Happy Father's Day, guys. And I'll see you next week.